You've been writing Mormon literature for 20 years, and we should talk a little bit about where Mormon literature is today. We would have these conversations at like late at night because, we didn't require quite as much sleep as we do now, talking about our grand aspirations for ourselves as writers, but also for the field. Where do you think literature is now versus where it was then?
That's an interesting question. So, I mean, one thing that has changed between then and now is just this question of the word Mormon
Hmm.
that we've come to use in different ways. I'm glad we still use it for the literature.
I agree.
Um, so I think, in the church, there was this emphasis on let's use Latter-day Saint and let's use the full name of the church, Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, to show the sort of claims to the connection to the core truth claims of the Restoration movement.
Hmm.
Um, and I support that, right? I think, there's good theological and kind of cultural reasons to not like Mormon Church as a nickname, but to say no, this Latter-day Saint movement. This is our self-understanding. But literature is not that, right? uh, I think you should use Latter-day Saint when you're talking about the aspects of faith that are very grounded in revelation and kind of the overtly spiritual history.
Hmm.
Mormon remains a really useful word to talk about the stuff that might not be the restored gospel of Jesus Christ, right?
Right.
It's
That's
just
more of the
sort of,
cultural.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's the culture, and sometimes we kind of blame culture for things and we just use it as the excuse when things don't work. But I think the reality is people have to live in culture.
Hmm.
And
And there
they
are positive aspects to that, definitely.
right. That we live in imagination, we live in possibility, and Mormon literature is a place where we can explore that kind of stuff.
Hmm.
And so I think we're at a time where there is a growing recognition that people need the space outside of the official Latter-day Saint, where they figure out how do they negotiate identity, how do they figure themselves out, how do they relate to that. And
Hmm.
literature can be really good at that.
Right.
So in terms of like, I guess more than where the field is, I'm answering what the field is.
Sure.
But Mormon literature is a space where you can explore, yeah, what it can mean to be Mormon and in what ways this intellectual inheritance and historical inheritance can say something about the world we live in now more broadly.
Sure.
The Association for Mormon Letters
Hmm.
defines Mormon literature really broadly. They
Hmm.
say it's anything by, for, or about Latter-day Saints, people in, broader Latter-day Saint movement, but almost all that's Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, right? Statistically,
Right.
we're like 98% of the larger movement. So, but yeah, it's anything connected to that in those three ways. And I think the past 20 years in all three, we've seen really impressive things. So in terms
Hmm.
of what's written by Latter-day Saints, um, tons of stuff.
Yeah.
Huge successes. I'm really excited about, say, Brandon Sanderson and the ways that I think Latter-day Saint thought and imagery shows up in his work in different
Hmm.
ways. Uh, in terms of things about Latter-day Saints, um, I think there's some exciting stuff too. A lot of the time, there's like an exoticism, an exploitive way that Latter-day Saints are treated. We're this
Definitely.
like close
Hmm.
enough to kind of mainstream American in American media that and it's usually American media where we show up. So we're close enough to be familiar, but then different enough to be spooky, scary.
Yeah.
And so certainly like in TV, we're seeing a lot of that.
Right.
But like I really liked the film Heretic that came out recently
Hmm.
that
Yep.
I thought treated Latter-day Saints as human beings and asked kind of religious questions
Interesting
about,
questions. Yeah.
in some ways, I thought that film was a dialogue between what the Hugh Grant character says about religion and
Hmm.
what the sisters show about religion and religious relationality. So that's
Totally.
not by a Latter-day Saint, but it depicted us. It depicted us in a way that I thought was sympathetic and human, and it asked the kinds of questions that I'm interested in.
Totally.
So I think there's good signs there. And then in terms of stuff that's for Latter-day Saints, we've seen a growing sort of market. There was a while when there weren't a lot of places to publish something that was
Totally. Yep.
targeted toward a Latter-day Saint. I think now I've been particularly excited by Wayfair magazine
Hmm.
taking off, and I feel like it's got a fairly broad Latter-day Saint audience that's interested. They read my essays more than they read my stories or poems, but I got a really good response to my last piece of fiction there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and I think that's important for the culture. And then, of course, there are a handful of us who are right at the center of the target where we're by, for, and about. And I'm just glad we're creating work and carrying on a conversation. And I
Hmm.
do think the past 20 years have been a time, there's still a lot of problems where there's not some institutional support and audience support in that. It's a tough time for publishing industry generally, but
Hmm.
I'm proud of people who have just kind of done it anyway.
Totally. Yep. I
So
would agree.
that, yeah, if we want to look back and say, what were people thinking about in the early 21st century? We
Hmm.
can get answers about what did they think about stuff within the church? What did they think about from the perspective of a Mormon heritage? How did the world look?
Sure.
Um, we've got more stuff being written in languages other than English and
Which
available
is
in
really exciting.
translation.
Yeah. Because, the membership of the church is larger outside of the continental US than
Yeah,
within. So that's more reflective of where we are as
yeah.
a
And it
membership.
took a minute for the cultural, I should say, we are still playing catch up
Oh, yeah. We'll be
and
playing catch up
having
for a while,
cultural
but
institutions catch up to the demographics.
right. Right.
But I think we are taking concrete steps now in a
Hmm.
way that we really is very rare to have somebody, bold, um, step out and do something the way, Kent Larson once did a like Portuguese language contest.
Hmm.
So there were some early steps, but I think we're doing a lot more now.